Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Mio. I'm a past president of New England Himss, and I'm on the speaker committee, which finds these wonderful speakers we had today. And I'm also work for Oracle as well. I'm here to introduce Arthur Harvey. He is on the CIO Council of New England Himss with me. And for those of you who don't know Arthur, he is a CIO at Boston Medical Center Health Plans, and he's going to introduce our fabulous panel of speakers today. Thank you.
Yes, the introduction of the introducer. Welcome to Himss. So thank you, Melissa. This panel, the CIO panel, we have done here for 3 or 4 years now. It sort of has a genesis of when a speaker missed their flight and we sort of had to scramble and say, oh, let's talk about something, get the CIOs. But it's turned out to be a pretty popular part of this event each year. And we kind of have a topic, and we've got some excellent people, and I'm going to go through their introductions. Most of you will know them anyway. I'm going to apologize to them in advance because I edited them for brevity. So there you have it. And of course, I'm also, as a CIO, means I'm old and can't read with my glasses on anymore. Our moderator will be Karen Bowling, is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for the Covenant Health, Inc. She is responsible for providing technology vision and leadership in the development and implementation of a strategic plan to support the infrastructure and application solutions for the entire system. Interesting things of note, Karen was awarded the 2012 Health Information Technology Men and Women of the Year, Shapers and Influencers. Karen holds a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and a Master of Science in Business Administration from Husson University. From accounting to IT, gotta love it. Okay. Brian Richard, Chief Information Officer, Masonic Care. Brian Richard joined Masonic Care as Chief Information Officer in January 2015. As the head of the Information Technology Department, he oversees all systems, software, hardware, telecommunications, and cybersecurity for Masonic Care. Geez, you got away without clinical engineering, huh? Lucky you. Brian had over 26 years of IT healthcare related experience. He's a graduate of Anna Maria College in Massachusetts, received his BS in Business Administration. Brian and his family reside in Madison, Connecticut. Manu Tandon, Chief Information Officer, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Manu serves as the Chief Information Officer, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, a Harvard Medical School affiliated academic medical center in Boston, Massachusetts, and part of Beth Israel Lahey Health. In his current role, he's responsible for all IT matters pertaining to the academic medical center. He directs BIDMC's Center for IT Exploration, which works to adopt innovative analytics, mobile, cloud, and AI/ML solutions for operational efficiencies and to enhance the experience of BIDMC's providers, patients, and staff. Before joining BIDMC in 2014, Manu served as Secretary at CIO for the Massachusetts Executive Offices of Health and Human Services, where you'll all remember he brought us the state highway, along with a bunch of other people on this stage. Manu is recognized by Computer World as one of the top 100 premier IT leaders in the world and by New England Himss as the CIO of the Year for 2014. Manu has an engineering degree from Indian Institute of Technology, an MBA from Boston University, and an MPA from Harvard Kennedy School. And lastly, rounding out our panel, we have Joel Vengco, Senior Vice President, Chief Information Officer, Informatics and Technology, Baystate Health. Joel Vengco leads the technology and informatics vision, strategy, operations, and innovation for the health system. He also holds the position of Chief Information Officer for the Pioneer Valley Accountable Care Organization, the ACO for Western Massachusetts. In 2013, he co-founded the Pioneer Valley Information Exchange. In 2014, he founded TechSpring, Baystate Health's Technology Innovation Center, seeded by a $9.5 million state grant awarded to Baystate Health by Governor Deval Patrick and the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. Mr. Vengco has over 18 years of healthcare information and technology experience. Geez, I'm sorry, Joel, I've somehow skipped over the fact where you also worked in industry at GE and at Boston Medical Center. I've worked with the guy a couple of times in my life, so my apologies. My highlighting was bad. Mr. Vengco has over 18 years of healthcare information and technology experience. And he's been recognized by Becker's Hospital Review as one of the top 100 health system CIOs to know, 50 national leaders in IT. He's also been recognized by Modern Healthcare as one of the top 25 clinical informaticists in the country. In 2016, he was appointed by Governor Baker to the Massachusetts Digital Healthcare Council. He is frequently asked to speak at conferences on HIT-related topics and is a lecturer at Boston University School of Management. Mr. Vengco holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Boston College, and his master's degrees from Harvard University and the Boston University School of Medicine. So, after my speed reading, let's just give this group a good welcome and round of applause, because they're all talented people. Okay, live up to that.
Well, thank you, Arthur, for those introductions. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. I would ask that you please hold your questions to the end, and then we'll have an opportunity to express them then. So we're going to start with taking about 3 to 5 minutes per organization to describe what they're doing for their EHR and software within their organizations. So I'm going to start with Manu, right dead center.
All right, good afternoon. Nice to see you again. It's glad to be back in this organization. And thank you to the organizers for putting this together. So I'm at BIDMC. It's an academic medical center in downtown Longwood Avenue, recently part of the BILH system. We are probably one of the few AMCs left in the country that still have a homegrown EHR. So we have an internal staff, developers, product managers, what have you, that maintain and continuously enhance the EHR. It's been around for over 3 decades, but even now, every month, we are putting out about a dozen new pieces of functionality. So you can only imagine what that means in terms of the maturity of the product. The title of this session is about what's after EHR, and I look forward to talking about that. But I would be remiss if I don't be aware of the fact or mention it to you that the healthcare sector is undergoing a tremendous amount of change and pressure, and the healthcare workers are when you read their employee surveys, employee satisfaction surveys, as an industry, healthcare is falling behind the curve, and we talk about physician burnout and workflows and what have you, and I think fairly or unfairly, EHRs find themselves at the center of that discussion. They're not super popular with physicians, and while they may have clammed in quite a bit of functionality, on the workflow side of it, they still lack some features. So, that could very well just be because, frankly, it's a new industry. The whole EHR market is fairly young. It was the Meaningful Use program that spurred its growth. And so one could, be at the school of thought that it's just a matter of time before it matures further, and there's some new players that are coming in. Another school of thought is that these EHR systems ultimately will become back-end transaction systems, and that newer tools that can sit on top of these EHRs that are more consumer-friendly, are more physician-friendly and staff-friendly and patient-friendly will essentially, make it mute as to what underlying EHR is running in your organization. And then when you couple that with the fact that big systems are getting created and hospitals are merging, and invariably there's heterogeneous EHRs in these merged organizations, one has to pay attention to this second school of thought that says, can you always get on one EHR, or would you have to be forced into situations where you have to put one tool on top of common tools, maybe a common patient portal, a common search functionality, what have you, on top of EHR. So from BIDMC's perspective, from my perspectives, we are in some ways trying to watch where the market goes and trying to be nimble enough to direct in both directions. So we are, while on one hand continuing to develop a functionality for our EHR, as I mentioned earlier, we are also constantly looking at innovative ideas in AI and ML and beacons and mobile apps so that we can put them on top of EHRs. But it's certainly something that as a stakeholder and a person that has tremendous amount of interest in this field that we are watching and seeing how it goes.
Thank you. Joel?
Joel Vengco from Baystate Health. Maybe show of hands, does anybody know where Springfield, Massachusetts is? All right, I just want to make sure. All right. Good. So you know it's in Western Mass, and there's electricity out there and all that sort of stuff. So make sure you visit some point if you get past Worcester.
New casino.
You could say, what's that?
New
A casino.
casino.
That's right. There's a new casino there also. So we're on the Cerner EHR. Have been on Cerner for probably about 17 years now. So well before my time. But we also have, just so you understand the landscape, we also have another probably 12 EHRs out in the region. Within Baystate Health, we are unified on Cerner Millennium, but on the revenue cycle side, on the ambulatory environment, it's Centricity still, and then on the inpatient side, it's Siemens Envision, which is the oldest Siemens rev cycle platform. So you can imagine that we're going to try to unify that once Cerner is ready to have that unified. But from the EHR perspective, I just want to echo all of the things that Manu had mentioned. We are absolutely focused on what we call internally the AERO project, which is EHR optimization, really focusing on usability for clinicians. And we are starting to experiment, and we can talk a little bit about that later, I suppose. We're already starting to experiment on this notion of having the EHR be sort of the back-end database such that we can begin to manifest the workflows that clinicians desire for their specific divisions in different ways without disrupting the guardrails that we've set forth for documentation, for clinical decision support, all of the things that we still want to have expressed to the clinicians so that we can deliver care in a standard form and fashion. The other aspect of what we're really focusing on with EHR is now that we've gotten through this decade and a half of information input, we're really looking to extract that data, that information in ways that we can begin to really leverage it for delivering better care to our patients, making data-driven decisions, which our patients don't necessarily realize that we are still kind of viewing medicine as an art mostly than a science. And the only way we can get to that science threshold is if we leverage the data in the way that we should. And so interoperability is a necessity, it's absolutely imperative. But also it's the kind of data that you end up commingling with that information, that clinical information. And we're really focusing on social determinants of health now. We are in the Medicaid ACO. But we also realize that our patients and consumers are not just patients 100% of the time. And so this notion of commingling data about them outside of the health system is an important aspect of what we're beginning to really try to put together with our health system so that when patient Joel Vengco comes into the health system, we know how to engage with him in the appropriate manner, not just from a disease or chronic disease perspective, but also as a human. So we've been focusing a lot on that as well.
Great, thank you, Joel. And Brian?
Sure. My name is Brian Richard. I work for Masonic here in Wallingford, Connecticut. There you go. Drop that. And I'm a little bit of the outcast up here. One, I'm from Connecticut, and two, I live in the post-acute world. So what that means is, for us, is we are a long-term care continuum. We have our software vendors are Cerner, Meditech, as well as NetSmart, the old McKesson system. So we run everywhere from the largest nursing home in Connecticut, as we are the leading provider of senior care services in the state of Connecticut. Large nursing home, residential living communities for independent living, assisted living, memory care. We also have a small hospital, a small geriatric hospital, outpatient clinic, and then a large home health and hospice presence throughout the entire state. So we're pretty spread out throughout the state. These systems afford us the ability to go into the niche of every single part of that business that I mentioned, and through our continuum, where the patient ideally comes in at a certain point in their life, and we would like to keep them in our continuum, and as they move throughout the continuum, I echo what Joel said about the interoperability, that we must do a good job of keeping track of all their care information as they transition from, say, independent living to assisted living to memory care to the nursing home to home and perhaps to home health and hospice. So that is critical, and I look forward to talking more about some of those innovations as we get into this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So as our first question that we have for the group today is that your first system users were clinicians, and then there were patients. Describe how the needs of these users have been satisfied or lack areas that might be lacking. And are there any relevant customers or users of your systems that you might identify with? So we'll start with Brian.
Sure. So again, our customer really is the child of the people we serve and the resident we serve. So it's typically, one, it's female who are primarily the decision makers in the family, and it's typically the age range is from 45 to about 65, trying to figure out really what is the best possible care for their parents that they can receive at this point in their lives. So there's a lot of decision making involved in that, and we're actually going through a rebranding process right now of changing. We're a CCRC, which is now a life plan community. So when is that decision made? How do we market to those people that they should go ahead and talk mom and dad into selling their house, to coming into Massonicare, to coming into one of our beautiful residential living communities, either in Wallingford or Chester or on the shoreline in Mystic? How is that decision made? So, we need to incentivize them to do that. We need to be out there in front of them. And lastly, and more importantly, a lot of them are not local. So when they're far away, they need to keep track of how mom and dad are doing in their particular community, nursing home, what have you. So really the family portal is what we've really strived for and adjusted for, so that they could, the kids and the grandkids can subsequently see what's happening to mom and dad, grandma, grandpa on a daily basis. Track whether it's their sleep patterns, how they're doing cognitively, and many other things. So that's really where we're focusing right now.
Thank you, Brian. Manu?
All right, so who are my customers? I have to say that 5 groups come to mind. So if you could be patient with me, I'll explain. First group and foremost is the patient, of course. Now, we are a tertiary care provider, so we, the fact is that our capacity is really limited by our facilities. So we are constantly in an extremely busy state. And so the patient experience when they go first of all, going to a hospital is never a fun thing to do. But on top of that, when you go to a hospital which is extremely busy, and where sometimes it feels like people are more busy dealing with the busyness than with dealing with the actual patient conditions, can be very, very stressful. And whether we like it or not, the fact is that people end up staying in the hospitals a lot longer than they need to from a clinical perspective. And in fact, data shows that about 25% of the bed time can be attributed to non-clinical delays. So for us, the sort of the combining of us being capacity constrained and trying to improve the patient experience tends to come up how can you use technology to basically get patients out on time as soon as they can, and how do we reduce length of stay, and how can we enhance their experience. So there is a tremendous amount of focus from a technology perspective in those areas. My second group of customers is our providers. As I mentioned earlier, the life of providers has changed since EHRs have come out, and there's physicians on both sides of the spectrum of this, but universally, they have all while they have adopted EHRs, they're still, figuring out how to deal with the EHR while also trying to take patient care. And we have heard all the stories about making eye contacts. So if you think about it from a paradigm perspective, computers, the way they are right now, the EHRs the way right now, they are desktop-oriented solutions. Yet physician's job and nurse's job is not a desktop-oriented job. It's a very mobile job. So we have to figure out a way to get information to them where they are, not have them come to us for information. So that's the second focus from the second perspective. I'll combine the third and the fourth customers, which is being an AMC, we have researchers and we have education as a big mission. And it is a very robust area. Even the economy is doing well, and NIH funding is actually surprisingly stayed strong in this current administration. That was not clear in the beginning of the administration. But the fact is, in the last 2 years, I have doubled the need of storage that I need than I've had in the last sort of 10 years, which is amazing. So we are looking at Amazon Cloud, AWS, and starting to because I'm truly worried that hospitals over time, if they don't pay attention to the cost of infrastructure, that despite everything, on top of everything else that's happening, that's putting cost pressures on the hospitals, that this will become another one of those difficult things to deal with. And I would say my last customer is my staff. I think increasingly we are asking more to do. Sometimes I feel that the healthcares have become very generic in what they're trying to do everything for everyone, and in the process have sort of become like a village in themselves. And they provide their own telecom technology, on network technology, on data centers, on applications, and it adds up very quickly. And the staff, to keep them energized, to keep them productive, to constantly look for new ways to increase productivity, to keep morale up, I think that's a key challenge from a CIO's perspective, because the pressure of demand that is coming from the hospital and clinicians is high. The fact is, IT is a constraint in any hospital. There's 3 times demand to do what we do typically. So their governance and transparency, all those play such a key role in managing the work and protecting the staff from all that pressure so that they can focus. If we're in knowledge-based services, knowledge-based industries do not work when you have multitasking and doing 5 things at the same time. You got to protect your staff on it. So sorry for the long answer, but those are my 5 customers.
Thank you, Manu. And Joel?
So, I view our core customer as the patient or the consumer is what we're beginning to really refer to them as. In terms of, and I'll get back to that, in terms of the provider or the employees of our health system being customers to IT, traditionally that's how I think IT is focused on it. When I came to Baystate almost 7 years ago now, I wanted to change that perspective and quickly change the vocabulary of my staff to calling folks around them their partners. So we don't call clinicians our customers, we don't call employees that are outside of IT customers, because it becomes a service of, you must do this and I want you to do that. And so, I would say to them, look, we want to get out of the, the taking orders, industry to really partnering and becoming more strategic side of it. And so that's where we've really headed, and I think that's helped with a number of things that Manu has mentioned in terms of burnout of my staff. I mean, there's always a lot more that IT is being asked to do, but having folks, especially on my team, be at the table with our team members across the enterprise has really created a profound change in the way that we interact with one another. We do have provider customers who are outside of the health system, those that we are affiliated with, and we consider them customers because we want to partner with our internal providers and our internal employees to connect with those affiliated providers for a variety of reasons that I'm sure you all are already aware. But in terms of our core customer being the consumer, that creates this, this sort of collective focus on doing better for the consumer, for the patient, and that brings to bear strategies like, how can we create a better work environment for our clinicians who are facing those true customers on a day-to-day basis. And so our EHR optimization is critical and core to that. That's really continuing to build the foundation that we started 15 years ago. And so that has been a large part of our work effort to date in partnership with our clinicians, is to make sure that they can have more face time with the patient, the consumer, versus being on their workstation. And so we've partnered a lot on innovations through TechSpring, some of which have been mobile device applications that have sat on top of our current EHR, as well as small Smart on Fire apps that have created things like this little timeline smart app that sits on top of the intro page to the clinician's EHR, and it's kind of like an Amazon package timeline. It shows you where the patient has been up until the point they're seeing them during that day. Have they filled out a social determinants of health screening? Have they seen their care manager? Did they pick up the meds, et cetera? But it's a sort of a nice timeline that allows them to really see in aggregate or in summary what's happened to that patient so they can get to brass tacks. We've also challenged our vendor partners to try to achieve a better workflow for the clinicians, whether it's mobile or voice. One of the challenges I brought early on to my team was how can we get back to a natural discussion between the provider and the patient? Is there a technology that we can get in front of them that would enable them to do that? And I think if some of you guys went to Himss this year, you probably saw Nuance do that demo with Yale. Actually, they're doing I think a project with Yale now on that. But it was a demo where it was a natural speech between the provider and the patient, and then the machine was basically scribing through natural language and natural listening, what's really happening in the course of that care. Now, we're not quite there yet, but we did come up with a number of technologies that would enable clinicians to be more facile with their day-to-day. So really, at the core of this for us, everything that we do, including the work that we do in analytics and innovation, is really focused on the core consumer, the core customer, who is the patient.
Thank you. Our next question is based on post-EHRs. Data is the core to succeeding more new digital information. So new entrants usually understand data a lot better than those who have been practicing longer. Are you currently worried that your organization don't understand how to use the data to deliver patient care? And if so, what are your organizations doing around business intelligence and data analytics? And for this question, I'd like to focus on Manu and Joel, who have more mature EHRs. So Joel, would you like to start?